The skies over Delhi are getting grayer. Not a day goes by when a banner headline in the newspaper or a top headline on a television channel isn't talking about the hazards that pollution is causing. Hospitals and doctors say that more patients than ever before are coming in complaining of respiratory disorders. And of course, governments are said to be thinking of radical steps to ensure that Delhi, for starters, topping charts when it comes to the world's most polluted cities. There's no doubt that we, of course, need these radical and long-term approach to solving pollution issues. But what are some of those answers that we could perhaps be looking at? What are the other alternate sources of energy, for instance, that we can be looking at, which will help clear our skies and hopefully clear our lungs as well? Well, that's what we are looking at. Many, of course, those startups that are now focusing on how they can jump in and clear the congestion in our streets and hopefully our lungs as well. Let me introduce my panel today. Gagan Bhatia, he's the Uber General Manager, North India. I'm also joined by Amit Singh, co-founder Shuttle. Shuttle is a bus aggregating platform. Also with me, Syed Sajjad Ahmed. He's traveled from Bangalore to Delhi in his self-made solar power car. And Samarth Vadwa, co-founder of Sun Bazaar, India's first online solar trading ecosystem. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking our time to speak to us. Gagan Bhatia, if I could just start by asking you, carpooling is now become the buzzword. I know that players like you, there's also Ola, and there's so many other players now thinking of carpooling, that this now has to be a practical solution, especially if they're getting in systems like, say, the even-odd car dates and all of that. How aggressively and actively are you looking at these solutions? What are some of the other solutions players like yourself can offer?
So carpooling, according to us, is actually a solution to solve the congestion problem on the roads. And this is a solution that we have implemented in over 90% of our markets abroad. And unfortunately, India is one market where we don't have the solution right now. If you think about this, think about the impact of this carpooling solution. Our goal is to connect anyone who needs a ride to someone who has a ride to offer. And the way we think about this, every vacant ride, vacant seat moving on the road is a possible ride that can be offered. That means one less car on the road, one less parking spot. That also means less congestion, less pollution.
Sure, I get that. But to all the cynics who would say, why wake up now? Why didn't we do something about it till now? What would you say?
In fact, we have been wanting to do this for the longest time. And we've been having these conversations with the government. It's enabling regulations that are missing, that have been missing.
And now you're hoping that you'll get all that sorted, given the urgency that we're now seeing?
Exactly. And, we are still hoping to launch the solution, and we are working with the governments to launch a solution that can help solve the problem, and the regulations can then follow.
Right. So we'll, of course, eagerly wait for that to happen.
Absolutely.
Amit Singh, now you're looking at a bus aggregating platform. Many people say that this is, going to be cost effective, it's going to be time effective, it's very practical. But we know that in our big cities, public transport has been a big letdown. We've been talking about it for years. Do you believe that that is where players like Shuttle come in?
Yeah, obviously. See, look at it from a perspective of the user. He's been, some of us have been spoiled by Ubers and Olas of the world, but the rest of us who do not have access to those vehicles, either they don't have cars or cabs. These people also want to commute with dignity, and that is a solution that we are trying to solve. So 3% to 5% we leave it to Ola and Uber, but the rest of the people still need some credible alternative, and we are trying to provide that.
Right. And what's been the response so far? Because you are sort of operating in Gurgaon, I'm told.
So we are in most of the NCR, Gurgaon, Ghaziabad, Faridabad, Noida, parts of Delhi. So response is like, it's like, we are selling food to hungry people. It's like that, we couldn't have expected such good response, largely because the system is broken, the infrastructure is broken.
Right, so there is a vacuum, and you're trying to fill that vacuum. So I would imagine that that's why the response is so good. Syed Sajjad Ahmed साहब, आपने एक solar powered car बनाई. बहुत लोग अब यही बोल रहे हैं कि we need to look at energies like, we need to look at the sun for energy in a country like India. जब हमारे पास इतना solar power है, तो हम उसका क्या कर रहे हैं? हम क्या कर रहे हैं उसका? अब क्या आपको लगता है कि जैसे आपने ये गाड़ी बनाई है, अब इसकी डिमांड, आप क्या उम्मीद करते हैं? क्योंकि अब पूरी कंट्री इसी के बारे में बात कर रही है।
जी जी बिल्कुल सही। हजारों सालों से जो है सूरज की एनर्जी की तरफ नहीं देख रहे थे, अब जरूरत पड़ रही है क्योंकि पेट्रोल जा रहा है ऐसी सूरत में जो है, और पोल्यूशन बढ़ रहा है ऐसी सूरत में जो है, हर एक की ख्वाहिश होती है कि ऑटो रिक्शा, एक कार रखने का एक पैशन होता है। तो इसलिए मैंने एक इलेक्ट्रिक और सोलर की कार बनाई है, जो ये लोगों के मन को भा गई है, एक पीस ऑफ अट्रैक्शन हो गई है। तो जो मैं चाहता हूं कि इसे ये आने वाले दिनों में इसका इस्तेमाल ज्यादा से ज्यादा हो सकता है। जैसे कि ये 1 किलोमीटर 20 पैसा पर वर्कआउट होती है। जो भी मैं 3000 किलोमीटर का सफर किया हूं, इससे मुझे अंदाजा लगा है कि पर किलोमीटर 25 पैसा। अगरचे हम बैटरी का डिप्रिसिएशन भी अगर लेंगे तो 75 पैसा अगर ऐड करेंगे तो 1 रुपी पर किलोमीटर में वर्कआउट हो सकती है। ये कार दूसरी कारों को, प्राइवेट कारों को, इनको पेट्रोल कारों को कंपेयर अगर करें तो 4 रुपए पर किलोमीटर वर्कआउट होता है। ऐसी सूरत में ये पेट्रोल का बचत भी कर सकते हैं इससे, और पोल्यूशन भी नहीं रहेगा। और ये कार कई डिजाइन में बनाकर 2 सीटर हो, 4 सीटर हो, 6 सीटर हो,
बेसिकली समथिंग फॉर एवरीबॉडी। इनफैक्ट सोलर कार और इलेक्ट्रिक कार्स के बारे में ये भी बोला जा रहा है कि इनको इवन ऑड से भी एग्जेम्प्ट कर देना चाहिए, which would just mean super basically. Samarth, you know, when we met last, which was over a year or so ago, you had spoken about, very passionately if I may add, about how we just don't look at solar power as sort of intensely or aggressively or positively as we ought to.
Yes.
Over the last 1.5 years, have things changed?
Things are definitely moved for the better with Prime Minister Modi going for the International Solar Alliance, and solar has become a buzzword. So now even the common person is interested in getting some sort of solar system installed in his or her place. And you know, there's an attraction towards solar. At least we started getting a lot of inquiries that how can we use solar in a limited budget.
Right.
So that is a great change.
Right.
So now the question is moved from that I don't have the budget to this is the budget I have, how I can incorporate solar in that.
Right.
So that is a positive aspect that has happened over the last 1.5 years.
Right. And that's of course good to know, because I mean I can see one thing that's common to everybody on the panel is that everyone's sort of trying to, like I said, plug that little vacuum that is perhaps there and quite evident. Amit Singh, if I could just come back to you, how do we, I mean the cynics will say it's okay in NCR, but look at the challenges of a city like Delhi, for instance. How do you believe that you can scale up to this point that the people of Delhi can also start using this more sort of frequently?
See, I don't see if there's any difference in the people who are staying in Gurgaon or Delhi, you know. It's the same people.
I guess the volume for you will just have to expand.
So we have to just, you know, it's an execution problem. It's not a demand problem. It's not a supply problem. It's a tough execution problem. And with technology and data sciences, we are trying to attack that. And I don't see a problem in handling Delhi in that sense, you know.
Did you have sort of a target for yourself? Have you sort of got a roadmap ready that, you know, this we do next, and then what next, basically, if I'm trying to ask you that?
See, it's about wherever the pain is higher, we want to move there. And Delhi has a lot of pain. And we hope to focus only on Delhi for the next year or so.
I see. Okay.
And maybe, you know, take care of at least 100,000 people every day. That's the target we have for the next 12 months.
That, of course, would be enormous. Gagan Bhatia, if there, of course, all the talk about shuttles being one option, carpooling being the other. Now, you mentioned at the start of the program that you've been meeting people in the Delhi government to try and figure out just what to do with the public transport. Mr. Amit Singh has also been part of all of that. Now, of course, like we're seeing a political will to try and change the situation. How do you believe this will play out over the next couple of weeks and months?
I think this is a very exciting time for, you know, environmental change, because the governments are waking up that, hey, there's a problem that we need to solve. And yes, a lot of people are criticizing that, hey, the government hasn't really thought about this, but I think we have to applaud them for taking a strong step, strong first step towards what we think can be an environmental, you know, solution to an environmental problem. And all of us are part of the solution. What we see governments doing now is actively seeking a solution to the problem. They are inviting us that, hey, we want to do this, help us make this happen. And I think this is...
are they setting you realistic deadlines?
Actually, we can do it much faster than the
I
1st
see.
January deadline.
I see.
1st January is still 20 days away. We can do it much faster than that. These carpooling has been a talk of the town for the longest time.
Right.
There are certain challenges that were there because of which it never scaled up.
And I want to get into some of the challenges, but before I get my other panelists, I want to ask both of you, is there sort of a conscious move to petrol cars?
So it's not about just petrol cars, right?
But that is a factor, right?
It
I
is a
mean,
factor.
we've been told what diesel's doing, for instance. So
If you look
does
what-
that sort of figure in the plans, or will that be something that you'll consider later?
See, our goal is, I think what Shuttle is doing, what Uber is doing, what other technology players are doing, we are just moving towards an optimum asset utilization. As long as we all do that, whether it's diesel or it's petrol, is less of a problem. Because a Euro 4, Euro 5 diesel car,
But we know that those standards are sort of fairly lax.
exactly,
Fairly lax.
and that's what we need to move towards. So
Right.
it's not a one solution to the entire problem. It has to be a multi-pronged strategy
Right.
to get
But
to the
eventually, is
problem.
that a plan, or eventually will you sort of
Absolutely.
think
We
about it?
will-
Samad, would you say that this is the best time to be in the clean energy, green energy business? Because like you're saying, more people are coming out and saying, this is my budget, help me. Solar is becoming the buzzword. Increasingly, people are sort of questioning, why am I driving a diesel car? Why are you driving a diesel car? What is electricity? Why aren't you tapping in on solar power? So would you sort of see more players in this space now?
Yes, these are definitely exciting times, especially for solar energy, because now even homeowners are moving away from their normal diesel gensets and they are going into a solar hybrid sort of a power pack system.
Right.
And I can definitely see more players coming in, especially in terms of electric vehicles and solar hybrid vehicles.
Right, right.
So that's an exciting area which people can definitely tap into. That will help solve the pollution problem, the congestion problem, as well as diesel and petrol issues which keep on happening.
Right.
So that is an area which is still untapped because there's only a couple of two manufacturers, I guess, who are manufacturing solar vehicles in India right now,
Right.
electric solar vehicles.
Right. Tell me one thing very quickly, which is, when I was sort of talking around at work about, things like switching cars, carpooling, using shuttles, and of course, very importantly, using solar power as well. There were certain sort of mindsets that people had about it. I mean, what are some of the more frustrating problems that you really encounter when you sort of deal with individuals and not sort of large-scale industries? When you
So
talk
basically, if I talk about solar, the main thing is upfront investment costs. So the way around is inclusive financial model and low interest cost and easy EMI scheme for solar as well as
right.
incentivization of solar.
Right.
So those are the ways forward in terms of the government regulations have to be in those lines.
एवं साहब बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो सब आपको देख रहे हैं और शायद वो उनको पूछना चाह रहे होंगे कि अगर उनको ये स्विच करना है तो वो कैसे करें, क्योंकि काफी लोगों के दिमाग में अभी भी ये बात है कि ऐसी गाड़ी लगनी चाहिए, ये गाड़ी होनी चाहिए, वो गाड़ी होनी चाहिए, तो आप उनको क्या कहेंगे?
मैं उनको ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि इसको एक्सेप्ट करो, इसको खरीदो, इसको अगर वो खरीदे डिमांड करेंगे और गवर्नमेंट एनकरेज भी करेगी ऐसी गाड़ियां बनाने में, तो जो है बहुत सारा उनका प्रॉब्लम, बहुत
देश
सारा
का प्रॉब्लम, हमारे सबका प्रॉब्लम.
जी जी.
Right. Amit Singh, the great part about India is that, given our scale, given our numbers, there's something for everyone. There's space really for everyone. There's space for you, there's space for him, there's space for Mr. Bhatia. There's really space for everybody. Now, for you,
less space on the roads, though.
there is space. That's the only one space that we wish that there was some more space. But I hope that carpooling and shuttles are going to sort of fill in that gap. But tell me one thing. What has been frustrating for you in your experience so far? Now, of course, you're trying to scale up. You're talking about big, ambitious plans for cities like Delhi. But what has been the kind of roadblocks or the frustrations that you've had to deal with?
See, it's not, we have had actually dream run, it's a 7-month-old company, and that I'm, sitting here talking to people like you guys. I think there's some distance that we have covered in a short period. The challenges, if I have to call about, is that, like let's talk about this electric vehicle. It's a great thing, we all want it. But is it in production?
Right.
Are they enough available?
Yes.
Are they of the quality that, people would move on to? I think that lag is going to impact us also.
Right, right.
So while we may be all aligned, we need that kind of production in the country.
Right.
There are very few bus manufacturers in India, and they are constrained by supply. DTC is facing that challenge. All the bus, agencies in the country are facing that problem. So there is some work required to kind of create a bigger market for buses, and then things will fall in place.
Right, and of course also make it mainstream. Make it, it doesn't have to be a class issue. I mean, let's admit it that often it is, getting into a bus has become, but that's because of the state of public transport that we have. So I guess it's a vicious cycle.
Yes, so the way I look at it is in a developed country, it's not that the poor people are, taking cars.
Right.
It's the rich who are taking public transport.
Yeah.
And that is what
Exactly.
development is.
And that's sort of that.
And I think, if we move in that direction, at the end of the day, what people care about are seats.
Right.
They can sit in a car, they can sit in a bus, they can sit in a metro. Problem is we don't have seats.
Right.
And that is the problem with the buses.
Right.
Not that the buses are bad.
Right.
Today the DTC buses you see are amazing. The cluster buses are all very good.
Right.
Just that they don't have seats. We need enough buses,
Right.
and the sex in the buses will come back. We need to make the buses glamorous again.
Right. That's exactly that's very well said. We do need to make buses glamorous again all over the world. People are hopping. I think the same people who own a fleet of cars here go abroad and happily hop into a bus without a second thought. Mr. Bhatia, to all those who sort of raised questions about, how will carpooling work, especially for women, given our sort of, society and its thinking in a certain way. But more importantly, I think let's just leave that aside. I don't really agree with that at this point of time where we are, but more about safety, just basic safety issues. What would you say?
So we look at safety from three angles, right? It's before the ride, it's during the ride, and it's after the ride.
Right.
So before the ride, it's about valid document checks, and we have been talking to the government again to create APIs which allow immediate verification of documents, whether it's passports, whether it's licenses, or everything. So that's one, and then obviously there are police verification and other checks that you do before the ride. Then during the ride, it's about having technological features like SOS button, send status feature, having the recent picture of the person so that you're not getting into a car with a stranger.
Right.
It's someone who has been validated.
And you've tightened all of this, of course, after your last experience.
It was even then it used to be extremely strong, and then after that we've actually doubled up, on that. And then after the ride, it's very important to gather feedback and act upon this. A lot of companies gather feedback but don't act upon it. We actively take out, waitlist drivers or deactivate drivers, and even customers who might be a threat to the drivers. Because even you have to understand that
it could be a two-way street. Yeah,
the guy who's driving the car has a family in his home.
Right, sure, I understand that. Absolutely,
absolutely.
Absolutely. No, because I do see the point that you're making, and increasingly people are saying that how secure you're getting into a car with strangers and how safe it's going to be, and more so for women. But I wouldn't say that all men would also be safe, including the drivers. अहमद साहब, जैसे इन्होंने बोला पहले कि आइडिया बहुत अच्छा है, आपने करके भी दिखा दिया है, बैंगलोर से दिल्ली आप गए, आपने ये करके भी दिखा दिया, लेकिन उनका सवाल था कितने गाड़ियां बन रही हैं आपके प्रोटोटाइप पे, क्या हो रहा है, कितने प्रोडक्शन में है, कहाँ है हम बात कर रहे हैं, आपने दिखा भी दिया है, बट इस पे कोई मूवमेंट है क्या? आपको लगता है कि इनफ काम हो रहा है इस पे?
इनफ काम बहुत कम हो रहा है। जैसे मैं एज ए इंडिविजुअल इनोवेटर 1-2-3 गाड़ियां बना के बता दिया हूं। जब चाइना की ऑटो रिक्शा आने से पहले 2004 में मैं अपना ऑटो रिक्शा बना के बताया। एनकरेजमेंट नहीं है। एनकरेजमेंट अगर हुआ और इसकी फैसिलिटी भी अगर जनता को दी जाए, जैसा कि चार्जिंग स्टेशन पेट्रोल बंक्स में अगर हो, तो जो है पेट्रोल बंक में एनफ जगह रहती है, कम से कम 50 गाड़ियां खड़ा के चार्जिंग में लगा सकते हैं। आने वाले दिनों में पेट्रोल भी रहता है और इसके साथ साथ जो है इलेक्ट्रिकल चार्जेस स्टेशन, पार्किंग प्लेसेस में भी इलेक्ट्रिकल चार्जेस के लिए प्रोविजन करे। तो जो है पब्लिक ये चाहती है कि हम कहाँ चार्ज करें, जाते जाते 50 किलोमीटर जाएंगे, अगर बैटरी डाउन हो गई नहीं होगी कि क्या इसका समाधान क्या है। तो वो अगर से ऐसे फैसिलिटीज फराहम करेंगे तो हो सकता है पब्लिक भी चाह रही है ये कब मार्केट को आएगी। हर कोई देखता है, पूछते हैं। और एक बात क्या है, हर किसी की ख्वाहिश भी है हम एक कार रखें। ऑटो रिक्शा की बात अलग है, वो बाजार में जाने के लिए आने के लिए होता है, मगर हर किसी की ख्वाहिश होती है कि एक जो है हमारे पास एक कार रहे। तो जो है एक सिंपल कार भी बना सकते हैं, एक इकोनॉमिकल मॉडल और डीलक्स मॉडल बना सकते हैं और सुपर डीलक्स मॉडल भी बना सकते हैं। तो जो है मैं तो बना के जो है उनकी ख्वाहिश भी पूरी कर सकते हैं और जो पोल्यूशन हो रहा है पोल्यूशन को भी दूर कर सकते हैं और इकोनॉमिकल भी है। तो जो है
हम तो ऑफकोर्स उम्मीद कर सकते हैं कि इतनी बात हो रही है पोल्यूशन, that all these sort of things that we're looking at, all these innovations or ideas that we're looking at really pick up. But Samat, the problem is that we're often told that the way we deal with a situation or an issue that crops up is just think about it in the immediate run. It's unusual, we are told by our critics, that it's to have long-term plans, to plan 10 years ahead. And that's why we are where we are. What would you say as someone who's of course not just knows the space but also wears his hat of innovation and great ideas?
No, so the thing is that we wait at the last minute and the problem reaches the critical stage and then we try to tackle it.
Right.
And the second thing is that we do not look at it in a longer run. So for solar, for instance, it's got a 25-year lifetime. But nobody has that vision that this is a constant source of energy, clean energy, green energy for the next 25 years.
Right.
All of them are scared with the immediate upfront costs, and then the vision just blackens out. So nobody sees on a longer horizon, and that is the issue with most of the problems.
Right.
So when the Reva was manufactured, it came in India in 2001. And now we are in 2015.
Yes,
And
how many
still commercial production of Reva, the scale of electric vehicles in India is not reached.
Right.
All the things that we are discussing here, even when we entered the market, a lot of people told us that, hey, we are used to chauffeur-driven cars. No one's going to use a taxi. It's only when the scale happens and when the convenience reaches that, day-to-day use, that people start realizing the real potential of it.
Right.
Whether it's shuttle, whether it's, solar power, it has to, government has to encourage scale.
Right. Completely out of time, but thanks all so much for taking our time to speak to us. Like I said, that we hope that these are the kind of ideas that will perhaps be the game changer and will transform our cities and our country as we say it. But thank you all so much for taking our time to speak to us. Well, it's a wrap then on that note. What do you believe are the contributions that all of us can make to ensure that our air is cleaner, our cities less polluted, and our future generations get a real fighting chance at breathing some clean air? Remember, you can always write to us. You can also tweet us on our Twitter handles. For the moment, from the entire team and me, goodbye. Thanks for watching.